Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about a subject that seems to be a lot in the financial planning news lately. The topic for today is Roth conversions. We're going to give you some expert advice, but first, I think we all need a little bit of an explainer. Let me just start with the simple principle of what's going on. You're offered the opportunity to convert your IRA, the one maybe that you rolled over from your old 401k, got a lot of money in it now, convert it to a Roth IRA by paying all the taxes now. Ooh, that sounds scary. In exchange for forever on tax-free growth and no required minimum distributions. So that's an interesting challenge. We're going to explain more and give you the way to figure that out. But first, Pam and Richard, is it my imagination? Are we just hearing a lot more about Roth conversions? Richard?
We are. I think so too. In fact, I saw a statistic just today that said that the financial advice platform Bolden has seen a 128% rise in the use of its Roth conversion calculator in 2024 over previous years. So there's a lot of interest out there.
Pam, is it something? Can you imagine doing that? Paying, and at what point in your life you actually paying all the taxes and then tax-free forever?
Yeah, this is one of the areas that our advisors in our network, this is a top question all the time, but particularly right now, heading into the new year. And there's so many things that I know that are so pressing that people really need to understand after they understand the basics about timing, about how to make this decision, that's why I'm excited that we're digging into this today about all the impacts that you have to consider and how do you determine the actual amount, or should you convert the whole amount? So all these things that we're going to cover are top questions that our advisors are getting from clients every day.
All right, so let me do something a little unusual. I'm going to start with a sort of a quick tutorial. What we've talked about right now are like the emotional considerations. Write a big check to the government. Nobody wants to do that. That's not how this decision is made. Rest assured, by the end of this podcast, you will find out exactly how to make the decision. But let's talk about the actual factual things that go into making this decision. Not a sales pitch from someone who's trying to manage your money, not an emotional thing. So let's talk about some of the critical ingredients in deciding whether to do a Roth conversion. So the first one that's pretty obvious is tax brackets. It's interesting. You have to think about, but you can't know whether tax brackets will go up in the future. Now, there was a concern last year before the election was decided that maybe brackets would go higher. Tax brackets don't really matter at the moment as to guessing the future, but part of it is the multiplier effect. Not only your federal tax bracket, but your state tax bracket if you live in a state tax. Mm-hmm. And getting out from under that impact down the road could be significant. The second is the need.
Can I just say one thing about that?
Yeah.
I think one thing that a lot of people are thinking about right now is whether those tax cuts that we got in 2017 are going to be continued after this year or not. And if they're not, our tax rates may be going up. So I think that's on people's minds.
Exactly. That's why I was saying that I think that once the election's pretty well, and the Congress is pretty well decided that that's not the biggest fear of tax brackets. But here's another one. How do you factor in your need for liquidity? I mean, if you write a check now, what are you going to live on? And if you take the money out of your IRA to pay the taxes, well, then you've got a double tax burden, and then you're not getting the benefit of this rollover. So we have to factor in liquidity and your need for the money, because assuming you have X in your Roth in your IRA, you probably have a hunk of money in your money market fund, and you don't want to give all that up to the government. Right. The third thing that most people don't even think about is something called IRMAA. That is the adjustment for your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums. And because the year you do a Roth conversion is going to add a huge hunk to your income on which you're paying taxes, that's part of the deal, it will also impact going forward. And well, they look back 2 years, but they will pick up on that. And you could wind up not paying 187 or 200 and something dollars, but over $600 for your Medicare Part B premium, you and your spouse. So we have to factor that in. Is it worth doing? If it's only a 1-year big hunk of income, you can go back and petition for that IRMAA to be reduced, but you've got a couple of years of paying higher Medicare premiums. And then the other thing is, there's going to be an impact not only on your income taxes, but when you do this conversion, you're adding income. So it will have an impact on your Social Security benefits. And you may have a reasonably high income, so up to 85% of your Social Security benefits can be taxed. But you have to calculate that into this decision, because this income bump is going to really impact you. And finally, there's this kind of unknowable thing about longevity. Do you want to do a Roth conversion when you're 45 and you have all that time free to grow tax deferred? Is it too late if you're in your 70s? There's got to be an actual way to calculate whether this is a good idea, whether you should convert all of it or just some of it. So, do you spread it out? Do you do it all at once? Does its tax impact last several years? And the Social Security and IRMAA impact? Your head is spinning right now. And I promise you that you cannot sit down and discuss this over the dinner table. You need a plan and you need a calculator that has all of this factored into it. And with that, I'm going to bring in a gentleman who's been our guest before, Boston University economist Larry Kotlikoff. He is my co-author on Social Security horror stories. He's written numerous books, and he has a couple of programs online, maximizemysocialsecurity.com and maxifyplanner.com. That Maxify Planner includes a Roth conversion calculator. So let me stop right there and invite Larry Kotlikoff, and we'll explain how this works. Larry, oh, welcome.
Hey, Larry.
Welcome back.
How you guys doing?
Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you. How you been?
Good, thanks. You,
Okay,
Yeah.
so you helped me with the column that is just will be posted along with my syndicated column that'll be posted along with this podcast. And we've talked about this many times. It's been a great tutorial. I just finished explaining all those factors that go into your program. Explain why you can't just sit down at a table and go, honey, should we pay the taxes now or later and do the Roth conversion?
Well, there's, as you said, there's lots of factors. There's, if you do a Roth conversion now, it's going to lower your taxes literally every year the rest of your life and your spouse's life if you're married. It's going to affect your required minimum distributions because those will be reduced in every future year that you would otherwise be subject to them. It's going to affect your state income taxes. It will affect what brackets you're going to be in. Hawaii, for example, has 13 income tax brackets. It's going to affect, because you'll have more money coming out in the future in the form of Roth withdrawals rather than IRA, traditional taxable IRA withdrawals. Those Roth withdrawals do not trigger additional taxation of your Social Security benefits, nor do they trigger additional taxation of your federal income tax. That's why the federal income taxes will be lower, nor do they trigger additional state income taxation. But they also don't trigger additional IRMAA Medicare Part B taxation. Medicare Part B is a very big tax that is a very crazy, kind of strange tax because let's say I'm 67, I'm on Medicare, whether I'm on the traditional Medicare or the Advantage plan, I could have an extra dollar of what's called modified adjusted income, basically taxable income this year. 2 years later, my IRMAA Medicare Part B premium will be $1,200 higher potentially if I'm right at the threshold. Where there's 6 IRMAA tax brackets, and an extra dollar pushes you. It's not like you lose a bit of an extra dollar. You lose, $1,200 on the extra dollar. It's a very weird.
Okay,
tax.
So I
punishing.
kind of explained this first. Everybody has questions. I'm just going to tee you up with this one for starters. At
Okay.
maxifyplanner.com or just maxify.com,
Mhm.
you have a financial planning tool that, which is its own algorithm, is patented and so forth. Explain, and the Roth conversion calculator is part of it. Explain simply, if you can, how
Okay.
how this program, these algorithms, this thing that you've created, I think you're going to get a Nobel Prize for this planning tool anyway, one day down the road. How can that
My
tell me?
mother thanks you. She's deceased, but she thanks you.
But how can you put all these inputs in? I mean, what do I, if I'm using the tool, what do I have to tell you? And how does it tell me convert or not?
Okay, so the basic thing about economics is that you can spend what you've got. So we start out with the resources of the households in our software, and we figure out a smooth living standard path. Uh, uh, that's called consumption smoothing. So it's not you get to tell us what you'd like to spend. Economics doesn't go that way. We say, what do you have? And we know you want to spend it so that you're not going to be starving in the future and splurging today and vice versa. You want to have a smooth living. So that's consumption smoothing. So we figure that problem out by thinking about the spending path and the taxes that spending path will produce, because that spending path implies a path of assets, which means path of asset income and a path of taxes. So the taxes are impacted by the spending, but the spending is also impacted by the taxes. So if you start out with some kind of assumptions about the taxes, that's going to impact the spending and vice versa, and also life insurance. So there's some very interconnected chicken and egg problems here that have to be solved. So that's where we got the patent for solving this simultaneous chicken and egg problem. Now, Richard, you had a question? Or
Yeah, if I could just ask, what is your assumption about what tax rates? Because it seems to me that's so key. Nobody knows the answer. So how does your algorithm deal with that?
so we're not into making any crude assumptions. We're into precision. So we do, for any household, we'll figure out their tax return every year in the future for the federal income tax, for the 42 states that have state income taxes. We'll figure out the IRMAA, how the IRMAA schedule is going to change, how the Social Security benefit taxation will change. The top threshold on the IRMAA tax, the top bracket is not indexed for inflation. The Social Security brackets are not indexed for inflation. So we're doing all the calculations under the hood in nominal dollars, just in dollars, to get the whole tax system right. But then we convert everything back into today's dollars to make it very simple for the user to understand what's going on, to see everything in today's hot dogs, if you like. So we're incorporating that. And so with a Roth conversion, what we're doing is saying, let's think about different candidate conversion plans, how much, and also the timing. And then we're looking at, well, if we convert according to this plan, what will that imply for lifetime spending? And if this particular plan produces higher lifetime spending, which means lower lifetime taxes, that's a plus. And then we're comparing, sequentially different conversion plans and honing in on the one that's producing the highest lifetime highest lifetime spending, therefore largest lifetime tax reductions. But we're using our basic Maxify algorithm. So for any plan of conversions that we're considering, we're making sure that everything is internally consistent.
Okay, Larry, I have a question. So obviously we think of this many times as a snapshot, one-time decision. This is a decision. You need to evaluate all the factors and consider everything. But I am getting the sense that your solution is more dynamic.
Yeah, it actually uses a technique called dynamic programming, and we have three dynamic programs talking to each other. So that's exactly the right term. And as you're going through time, you would want to update your plan and decide whether, the program might suggest converting this amount much this year and these amounts in every year in the future. And if the world changes, like tax, you can run the program with considering future tax increases. Like you can say that starting in 10 years, Social Security benefits or 6 years, Social Security benefits will be cut by 20%, or the federal taxes will be increased by 15%. Whatever you want to assume about future taxes, that will impact your thinking about what's the best Roth plan. But through time, the idea is that people would be updating their plans through time. Now, you might say, well, what if I converted a lot this year? Would I have made a mistake because taxes have been reduced in the future, and therefore it would have been better not to have paid taxes, paid on that conversion at a higher rate? Well, given how broke the country is, the likelihood of that happening is negative, zero. It's much more likely that there's going to be major tax increases in the future, and that you're going to find that you want to do even more conversions. But the key thing that we're finding that's really surprising that I didn't realize until we put this together is that this is a very nonlinear problem. It's because you do something today that has a big impact potentially
You've
overall.
got the stock market, that you have to figure out that all of that has to be factored in the timing of.
Well, economics says to deal with the uncertainty of the stock market and to on a risk-adjusted basis to plan. So one way we handle uncertainty in economics is to try and risk adjust all these uncertain elements about our future, and to act as if to translate that world of uncertainty into a world of certainty, a risk-adjusted world. So act as if the world is certain, but use very cautious, conservative assumptions. So the risk adjustment for all risky assets is to assume the person, the household, is investing in inflation index bonds, TIPS, charging inflation protected securities, and that's what our software does for this part of the analysis. It does what we call certainty equivalent deterministic planning. So we deal with that in that manner, and the next year you might turn out to have done better on the market than TIPS, and on average you will, and then you will make an adjustment given where you are, but on average you'll be pleasantly surprised. This is kind of self-protection. It's like extra saving. It's self-insurance, if you like, would be the term, would be the way to go.
Let me talk about the process, because I've been through it. You go to maxify.com and you secure it costs, I should say, $149. And there's help there. There's people that you can go to classes there, or you can do it with your financial planner, because you work with lots of financial planners. But the point is, what goes in, what you put into this program securely, what are the key ingredients? We have to give everything about our life and put it in there.
It's anything you would enter. It's much less actually than you would tell any other software program package, because we just ask you, about your labor income and that of your spouse or partner. We ask about your 401ks, your IRAs, your retirement accounts. We ask about your demographics, kids, their ages. Are they disabled? Because Social Security benefits potentially for disabled kids will come into play, and thinking about when they should get the best Social Security, take Social Security benefits. We ask about their Social Security earnings record. We ask about basically the whole resource side, their regular assets.
And then you push a button.
And then we push a button and we make this consumption smoothing plan. And then we push another button that says maximize it, optimize it. And you can optimize over Social Security decisions, over Roth conversion decisions, and also when to start your IRA withdrawals. And, I just did I have a kind of a case that I demoed to people for a friend of mine. It's based on a friend of mine. He's 65, retired, has $1.25 million IRAs, $1.25 million of regular assets. He's going to take Social Security at 70. If he does a Roth conversion, it's going to increase the present value of his lifetime spending by $251. Exactly. And it says
251,000?
sorry, $251,000, not
So you
251.
were able to tell him, knowing all this, do the
Yeah.
Roth conversion now before you take Social Security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It also says to do it over, the next
Well,
5
what do
years.
you think his lifetime is? What, 80 or what, or 90?
Well, we plan for people to live to their maximum age of life, which is in his case
Right?
would be 100. Because you have to
100.
plan. Economics says everything in economics planning is different from conventional planning, and for reasons that we could discuss at some point. But economics says you can't count on dying on time. You have to plan to your maximum age of life. If you want to take a shot at, there's not the probability you're going to make it to 100 is very low. So what economics says is, well, in that case, you should rationally choose to gamble a little bit and spend more when you're young and less when you're old. So you can set up like an age spending profile, and our software lets you do that. But the key thing I want to get across about what we're finding about that's remarkable based on our tool now is that it's like penicillin. What is special about penicillin and any antibiotic? It's that you take a large dose right away to kill the thing, to kill the problem, and then for a couple of days you take it again, some more, but you don't take a small dose for a long time because then it becomes resistant and then you die potentially. Okay, but the right solution, that's a very nonlinear solution to a major problem. And the Roth conversions, it's also very nonlinear because if you go big, which is to do a lot of conversions in a short period of time, and this gentleman for whom we ran the tool, it's $251,000 savings, and it says do all your convert your 1.25 million in 5 years, basically $300K a year, including some interest, and so that's going big and going or go home, because you're going big in the sense of doing it all and doing it all very quickly, because then you have all these years and under all these years in the future where you're benefiting from all these different factors I mentioned. No,
Okay, so that's kind of magnifying, if you will. And Larry, does the tool let me compare side by side?
yes, side by side. And you can check our answer. I can accept the program's recommendations into a profile and then take that, copy it, set up another profile where I modify it. I say, let me just do the same amount of conversions, but just over 3 years. It's fixed.
Yeah, change it. Yeah.
It'll go. I tried that for this guy. It goes down 40,000.
Yeah. Okay.
40,000 out of the 251. So it's very sensitive to getting this right. And then people can check our tax calculations and our state. We have tens of thousands of people who are using the software. And, the guy last week said, you missed something in the Rhode Island tax return. You didn't include that. Well, it's in there this week. I mean, we had to fix it.
Larry, what's an example of when the algorithm would say you should not do a Roth conversion?
Question.
Yeah. Well, if somebody had we have had a few cases like that. They're actually, pretty rare. So, there's usually something that can be done to the order of magnitude of 20,000 or more. But it could be somebody who has, first of all, very little in IRA. Well, they could have very little in IRA. If they had no IRAs to convert, they had no conversion, right? But even if they did, if they might not want to convert because of cash flow issues, and the software is trying to be sensitive to that. They ask you whether you want to optimize subject to not getting into a big cash flow problem.
In other words, they would not have enough money to pay the taxes right now.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
go
on
on.
the other thing, on the tax side, if you had, I thought for myself, I'm proposing to work till 75. I'm actually going to work. I'm going to retire a year after I die. That's my retirement plan.
Me too.
So, yeah. So but I thought, gee, this is not going to work for me. There can't be anything here. But I'm 75, 74 this month. My wife is 65. that matters because the benefits then extend over our joint lifespan, not just one person's. And it turned out there was even though I'm going to have it's that not that many years as somebody else who's younger to get to my maximum, there was still a significant gain of the order of also around $200,000 for in our case, even though I had significant taxable income and was in a high tax bracket for the next 4 years or so. But we still have found some people for whom it's not going to do much, but it's not going to hurt to run it. I
You need to
mean,
know. Yeah, yeah.
you need to, and the other thing is that if you're using conventional tools are saying, are asking you how much you'd like to spend in retirement. We don't care about that as economists. We say you can only spend what you've got. Okay. So my answer to that question is I'd like to spend $1 billion a day. And then they come back and they use what's called an income replacement rate to set a spending target that's generally miles too high. And then they say, well, the way you're investing, you'll never make it. So therefore invest with us. And with a high probability, you'll make it. Spending, by the way, on autopilot, never adjusting your spending, which is also to an economist absolutely crazy because if your assets fall in half, you're going to drop your spending. You're not going to just keep assuming that the market's going to come back for sure, which there's no guarantee for sure. So
this is really spot on, Larry, for such a big question about how and when should I do a Roth conversion.
Yeah. So then the other thing, Pam, is that once you have the spending target set, which is kind of part and parcel of getting the person to sign up, they can't adjust it. So if they go do a Roth calculation that saves taxes, that spending is fixed. So what they do then is assume that try and optimize the amount of wealth at the very end. So now they have a very different objective to what most households have, which is to save taxes to go on a trip, to go on a vacation, have a better car, to give more money to your kids. And right now, not at the very end. So then they're going to come up with a conversion strategy, which is going to be very different from what we're coming up with and could actually, based on our program, if you plug it in manually, you can plug it in. You can do manual Roth conversions if you want, rather than using our optimizer. If you plug it in, it could raise your lifetime taxes, not lower them.
Interesting.
So
Thank you.
Let me leave this with this thought. What I've learned, it's kind of a competitive field. The financial services industry is always coming up with ideas. When I discovered Monte Carlo modeling, I thought, well, that's great. And then I realized I didn't want to have only an 85% chance of not running out of money. I mean, I really wanted a 100% chance of not running out of money. But all these strategies are used by the financial services industry typically in order to gather your assets. So we'll manage the money so that we've got this program so it'll work out the way we say it will. Well, you don't manage money. You just have this Maxify planner, Maxify.com, at which you and your financial advisor sitting together can use this software. You're not gathering assets. That's really important.
We're not managing money. We're not giving investment advice, but we do have economic analysis of your portfolio. So we do let you educate yourself about the variability of your living standard if you're investing in a risky fashion, because economics says that if you do well, you're going to spend a little bit more. If you do poorly, you're going to spend less. You're going to adjust along the way. You're not going to put anything on autopilot. So we have mostly individual households, do-it-yourselfers, if you like, running Maxify Planner. We've been in business for 32 years, and we have, if you look at the Maxify.com, if you look at the testimonials, there's 100 testimonials, one's better than the next. These are regular people, just like anybody else, just who are able to run it without
Yeah.
Any
Without an
help?
advisor. Yeah, I mean, I just see, and just to wrap up here really quickly, my last comment is that I can see not only the value of, especially for do-it-yourselfers who really do love to, get these questions, get their arms around these questions themselves, but it also makes anybody recognize, if nothing else, just listening to this podcast, the variables and all the considerations that go into this decision. It's just a lot of moving pieces.
One last comment, which is I want to put a plug in for economics. We've been at this as economists for 100 years, and there's been a whole range of giants in finance. And Maxified Planner is incorporating all that knowledge and all that work, all that theoretical work, and it's entirely different from what Wall Street is marketing doing in terms of their planning. There's, just put it this way, or think about it this way. There's no top finance department in any business school in the country that teaches conventional financial planning. There's no top economics department that teaches conventional financial planning. If any economists did it, they would probably be fired. I'm serious. And there's no CFP program or any of the other designations that teach economics-based planning. So there's a complete disconnect, and this is the only economics-based financial planning tool out there, and it's taken a long time. It was developed with the help of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, with the Sloan Foundation, the National Institute of Health, through the National Institute of Aging. So this is, akin to the Human Genome Project in some sense, in the sense that it's like a collaboration of the public sector and the private sector. I mean, the government and the Sloan Foundation is a nonprofit. Yeah.
I'll stop you there and say that is why, folks, if you're listening, if this flew over your head, and I've talked to Larry about it a lot, that's why there's going to be a Nobel Prize down the road someday.
No,
so here's what I want to say. Roth conversions are in the news. As you just realized, there are a lot of moving pieces. Tax brackets, Social Security taxation, IRMAA, all that kind of stuff. You need to figure this out based on what is best for you over the long run, whether you do or don't do a conversion, whether you convert part or all, whether you do it all at once or over a period of years. The way you go through this process is we're going to put up at friendstalkmoney.org, we're going to put up not only the link to this, we'll put up a longer podcast I did with Larry. If you really want to get deeper into it, we will put up the link to Maxify. It costs $149. Financial advisors take out a license and do it with their clients. We're cutting edge here. Larry, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Larry.
We're wishing you good planning in the new year, everyone.
Good planning. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Thank you too.
Friends Talk Money is funded in part by a grant from the Investor Protection Trust. The IPT is a nonprofit organization devoted to investor education. Since 1993, the IPT has worked with the states to provide the independent, objective investor education needed by all Americans to make informed investment decisions. Visit investorprotection.org. We also receive support from the North American Securities Administrators Association, known as NASA. It's the oldest international investor protection organization. NASA's members include state and provincial securities regulators from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico who serve on the front lines of investor protection. Recognizing that education and awareness are powerful tools in the fight against investment fraud, NASA is pleased to sponsor Friends Talk Money. Here are 3 important tips to help you protect your money from fraud. With investing, there are always risks. So be cautious of anybody telling you that a certain investment is guaranteed. You should also proceed with caution if somebody is promising very large investment returns. This is a common red flag for investment fraud. Last and most importantly, be sure you're working with a licensed or registered financial professional. You can check your advisor and make sure they're licensed by visiting brokercheck.finra.org. NASA is your partner in keeping you safe and helping you avoid investment frauds. Visit nasa.org and click on the Investor Education tab to learn more.